Seltzer Kings.
Podcasts.
Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. Enjoy comfortable rooms and friendly service when you stay with Hilton instead. Save up to 25% this season when you book with Hilton. Hilton for the stay. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. You're ready to move your business forward, but first, you need to find the right team. Start your search with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It can help you reach qualified candidates fast, ensuring your listing is the first one they see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. See the results for yourself. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay, Gavin, get back to me when you guys have sent so much as a crumpet into space. Ass.
The following podcast contains...
You cannot say filth, flying filth in front of people.
explicit language.
Hello and welcome to the podcast that asks a simple question. When you spent $250,000 on Coke and it wasn't the drug, what the hell were you thinking? I'm your host, Dave Bledsoe. This is episode number 515, Sodas in Space. Where we talk about that time the Cola Wars exploded in orbit. Stay tuned. What the Hell Were You Thinking podcast is brought to you by Tap Water. It's right there, and it's free. In a world seemingly obsessed with staying hydrated, Tap Water is here to remind you that nothing is better than a simple glass of cold water right from the sink. Sure, you can pay $3 a bottle for an artesian water, or $5 a bottle for water infused with electrolytes, or you could, just hear us out, get a glass of water from the tap. It's literally the same damn thing. Tap water eliminates the carbon cost of bottling and hauling a glass of damn water from some alleged alpine source to your overpriced handbag because it is actually available every goddamn place you go. Don't fall for marketing. Don't believe the hype. If you're thirsty, get a glass of fucking water straight from the tap.
As you know, there are not many territories left where the Cola Wars is not being fought. And you should really look at space as our latest battleground.
3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. We have liftoff.
Pepsi launched the first strike in the battle for Space Cola supremacy in 1985, sending a Pepsi can into space aboard the Challenger, testing astronauts' ability to consume soft drinks in zero gravity.
Generation X? Yeah, we didn't really give a shit about space.
Yeah, okay, and this is relevant to me how?
I mean, we were down with like fictional space, but the actual going to space in the 80s just wasn't very exciting after the newness of the shuttle wore off and it was just a Ford F-150 in orbit. Unless, of course, they were blowing it up on launch randomly. See episode number 289 for details.
That's a plug.
NASA kept promising us cool shit was going to happen, but mostly we just haul spy satellites and bottles of vodka to the Russian space station.
Mir, this is U.S. Space Shuttle Atlantis.
Helping a lonely cosmonaut stay loaded in orbit did not seem to be advancing the boundaries of human knowledge. We weren't even sending cool probes and rovers to Mars back in the 80s. Everything was still in the planning stages. Important stuff to be sure, but seeing as how they frequently forgot to convert to metric, I'm not sure they were taking it all that seriously. Like, we kept hearing about this amazing new telescope that NASA was building. It was going to be so powerful, we could literally look backwards in time.
Can I see a dinosaur?
No, not time. You couldn't see dinosaurs, okay? And then, when they finally did launch it, we couldn't see much of anything because when NASA was planning the Hubble, apparently they skipped the meeting where the fucking mirror was designed and this 8-foot diameter, nearly 2,000-pound hunk of ground glass that cost them billions of dollars was as blurry as I am after a bottle of Jameson.
Need to go back to rehab.
Joke's on you. I've never been to rehab. Which meant, of course, another mission had to go up at millions more dollars to put a pair of glasses on the Hubble so it could correct the problem when we could see further than the mere space station. It seemed like NASA couldn't get anything right for most of the 80s. This is largely because after the moon missions, Congress cut NASA's budget, and without that fat Kennedy moon money, expectations had to be scaled back somewhat.
To Boise?
At least that far. This did not mean there were no technological advances at the time. They were just smaller and came from private industry rather than big government programs. For example, the 80s provided a solution for all those astronauts who thought to themselves, you know what would be good right now? A cool, refreshing, carbonated soft drink of some kind.
No one wants that.
Yeah, I know no one wanted it, but yet they went ahead and did it, and that's what we're going to talk about this week. But first...
Oh, really? This is becoming quite tiresome.
We should talk about food in space. From the very beginning, the hardest question to answer for the space program was,
where are we supposed to eat?
I mean, sure, getting a human being in orbit was hard, bringing them home safely harder still, but snacks?
That's the important shit.
I mean, you can't just pack snacks. An astronaut by the name of John Young got in legit trouble when he took a sack lunch on Gemini 3 from NASA. Quote, the conversation about the consumption of the sandwich, which lasted about 30 seconds during the Gemini 3 flight, became a serious matter that drew the ire of Congress and NASA's administrators after the crew returned home. Congress was particularly upset and brought the matter to the leadership's attention at a hearing about NASA's 1966 budget, unquote. Ostensibly, the problems were crumbs.
Are you a messy eater?
Like if they got into switches and shit, apparently bad stuff could happen, or at least that's the story was told. I just think they were mad because they didn't get a sandwich themselves. And truly, I suspect it had more to do with the vast amount of money spent on creating special space food.
Tang with breakfast, tang with lunch.
During the early Mercury missions, the astronauts probably could have just grabbed a snack before launch, but millions of dollars of today's money was spent on coming up with a way to take food safely into orbit. And what the astronauts got for all that money and time was goo in an aluminum toothpaste tube.
It sounds delicious.
And because aluminum is very heavy, NASA quickly moved to different forms of space goo. Cubes, powders, gelatin, all packaged in such a way as to minimize spillage and crumbs. So by the time the astronauts of Apollo 8 in 1968 went up, they even got a spoon.
This is some high-tech shit.
Needless to say, the astronauts hated the food. It was bland, hard to eat, and specifically designed to keep them from needing to take a shit in orbit, the mechanics of which are an episode in and of themselves. I think I'll put that on the schedule. Today, of course, folks up at the International Space Station eat food that is almost but not entirely like the food eaten down here on Earth. It's based off of, but presumably tasting better than military's meals ready to eat. Modern astronauts eat a variety of cuisines, all slightly modified to prevent the aforementioned crumb problem, along with regular fresh fruits and vegetables brought up on regular supply runs. It was, however, a two-way journey, this space food creation. Some of the food from the astronauts found its way back to Earthbound bellies, beginning with the venerable fake-ass orange drink.
With the success of the recent Apollo space flights, man has been brought another step closer to the moon. Aboard these manned Apollo flights, 3 astronauts, and with them, Tang. Tang, the energy breakfast drink with rich natural flavor and more vitamin C than orange juice. Still, Tang's biggest role isn't in NASA's space program. It's right here on Earth.
The drink Tang actually predated manned space flight, but it became famous by its association with the space program to the point where most people just assumed it was made for NASA. The techniques developed to preserve and minimize storage for food in space became MRE rations and survival supplies, and work being done today on how to grow food in space for missions to Mars and beyond could provide a way to feed people here on Earth, particularly with the world boiling in shit like it is. That's right, the fungi's food for spaceflight might someday feed the masses of a parched and dying world where the survivors of the apocalypse club each other to death with the battered remains of a Bluetooth-enabled fleshlight in scorched cities around the world.
But you are ever the optimist.
But the one thing science could never crack in the great NASA lunch block was how to get a can of soda into space. Well, more to the point, how to get a can of soda into space that one could actually drink in space. It took the greatest mind in soda science to crack the mystery and break the final frontier of the ongoing Cold Wars in the 1980s, and it all began with one simple problem.
Very fizzy. It's fizzy. It's gone fizzy.
So Coke and Pepsi had to go to work and conquer the fizz factor. This show has covered the long and bloody cola wars of the 70s and 80s.
I might almost say excessively.
But in 1985, the conflict went out of this world.
Really, Dave?
For decades, Coca Cola was the number one carbonated soft drink in America and in the world. But started in the late 60s, Pepsi began challenging Coke for dominance. The internecine conflict played out over the airwaves at state fairs and at least one instance a vicious mafia-style execution in an upscale Manhattan steakhouse. Or that's a rumor that I heard. This particular battle began innocently enough. In 1984, a Coca-Cola executive named Brian Dyson was sitting in his Atlanta office pondering ways to boost Coke sales. The company was booming with the introduction of its latest product.
Just for the fun of it, just for the one of it, just for the taste of it, Diet Coke.
And needed something before the rollout of their new super secret formula that was going to go over so well. Also, the company needed to buff its image with the United States government after they had backed the wrong horse in the 1980 election, when the company went all in on local boy Jimmy Carter. Pepsi, ever the yang to Coke's yin, had backed, well, you know, the other guy.
Say his name!
Ronald Reagan.
He said it!
That's when Dyson had an idea. Coca-Cola, but
In space!
Dyson was a dreamer, and he liked to dream big. He envisioned Coke vending machines in every space station, moon colony, and intergalactic battlecruiser built by NASA.
Those are big old dreams.
There was just one problem. Carbonated beverages don't really work very well in microgravity. According to the BBC's Science Focus, quote, without gravity, there's no density gradient within the drink, so its bubbles float around randomly inside the liquid. Occasionally, a bubble strikes another with enough force to overcome surface tension, and they merge. So over time, the bubbles coalesce into a few large bubbles that squash the others into a sort of static foam, unquote. So rather than the effervescent fizz of earthbound soda, an Astro Coke would have 2, maybe 3 bubbles of CO2 floating around in the middle of a big foamy shit bag. So Dyson began to ponder what it would take to overcome this problem. He brought in his team of soda scientists, who probably resented being pulled from their labs tinkering with the formula for new Coke, and demanded that these scientists provide him with a way to make Coke in space a thing. And their answer was...
Why the hell would you do something stupid like that?
And Dyson replied with a magic word that makes billion-dollar corporations throw all logic to the wind and spend absurd amounts of money on gimmicky bullshit.
Marketing.
Marketing, super.
Coke would design a can that would work in space, then get NASA to put it on the shuttle.
But why?
For, and I want to be very clear here, very scientific reasons. I mean, money is numbers. And numbers are math. Math is science, and science is what we do in space. Ergo, money is actually science. So Coke approached NASA with the idea of building a Coke delivery system for the space shuttle crews. Now NASA, no stranger to the power of marketing themselves, was receptive to the idea. They framed the idea as a way to get astronauts in orbit to drink more fluids, and not a cheap stunt to get NASA's name in the news for reasons other than massive delays, cost overruns, and questionable safety practices. This is what they were doing when they ought to have been testing the rubber O-rings in cold weather temperatures. So, with NASA's blessing, Coke began working on designing a can that could overcome the limitations of carbonation in low Earth orbit, and this would have been fine until... Pepsi found out. When word of what the boys in Atlanta were up to found its way to the boys in Harrison, they were,
You have made me very angry. Very angry indeed.
Pepsi instantly began working the refs, and in this case, the ref was the White House. A Pepsi VP by the name of Max Friedsdorf had worked for the Gipper and called up his former boss who was running the nation during the time of an increasing military tension with the Soviet Union, and he naturally dropped everything to settle this inane dispute. But not before Pepsi had written a very sternly worded letter to the director of NASA that should go down in history as one of the pettiest, whiniest, do you know who my friends are missives ever written, as reported in the New York Times. Quote, "You should further be advised that PepsiCo is strongly identified with the Republican Party and the support of President Reagan and his administration," Mr. Friedersdorf wrote. At the same time, Coca Cola was a very strong supporter and advocate of President Carter and is closely identified with the Democratic Party, unquote.
But what a little bitch.
In fairness, Pepsi had solid legal legs to stand on. Coke was, after all, offering a product under contract to the United States government outside of normal procurement channels. What should have happened was NASA would identify a need for a product and they would issue what is called an ITT, or an invitation to tender, so that any interested party could at least bid on producing said item. That meant Dr. Pepper, Faygo, Fanta, RC Cola, no, maybe not RC, and all those off-label budget brands of soda that they sell in Walmart that sound almost like the real thing, like Coca Cola, Schmepsi, Dr. Thunder, and Mountain Lightning, could all compete for the contract. NASA did not do this because NASA never once said, "The goddamn Russians have put Bacall soda in space and we need to close the Coke gap." No, that never happened. A guy at Coke called a guy at NASA, and the guy at NASA said, yeah,
sure, whatever. Great.
But rules are rules, and rather they used to be rules before the current presidential administration. So rather than deal with the now astronomical levels of bullshit, NASA canceled the project. That should have been the end of the story. But if you'll check the time elapsed on this episode, you will know it wasn't. Because someone at NASA, someone who probably owns stock in Coca Cola, reached out a few months later to Coke to start it up again. More from the New York Times. Quote, "However, the agency had a long list of technical requirements that the Coke container for the test needed to meet in order to fly on the shuttle. Consuming a soda in space presents numerous technical challenges. Astronauts usually drink water or rehydrated powder drinks from soft pouches, which weren't suitable for containing carbonation. Soda needs a rigid container with a dispensing valve that let astronauts drink without releasing a sticky spray that could be dangerous to the inside of the delicate spacecraft," unquote. Coke went back into the lab and spent $250,000 in 1985 money, that's just shy of $800,000 today, in creating an elaborate device that safely contained the syrup that was the base element of Coke, injected CO2 at the precise moment of consumption, allowing the effervescent bubbles to mix in the mouth of the drinker and deliver a Coke-like experience in microgravity. It was Coca-Cola's crowning moment, at least according to Dyson, who gave a speech to Coke bottlers in the same ringing tones that JFK had used to declare that America would send a man to the moon in this by goddamn decade. The can was scheduled to launch on the shuttle mission in 1985, and finally Coca-Cola could put behind them the shame of the new Coke debacle and deal a death blow to their hated enemy Pepsi, until the can failed to meet safety standards, and also because, again, Pepsi was improperly left out of the process. Coke had lost the battle, but was not going to give up the war. It was determined to put Coke in orbit and prevent Pepsi from doing the same. At least, not first. Pepsi had the White House, but Coke had a senator, a powerful senator, Georgia's senior Senator Sam Nunn, who held the chair in several powerful Senate committees, doling government dollars out to needy corporations in the form of fat defense contracts. Nunn called NASA, and Coke was back on the menu for the shuttle, again for the time. Quote, "All right, goddammit," said NASA, "if they want to pay their way, we'll fly. No publicity in space. We won't put their name on the side of the shuttle," unquote. However, as part of that deal, Pepsi would also be allowed to send their product up on the same mission if they could come up with a suitable dispenser in time. This was fine by Coke. After all, it had taken them the better part of a year and $250,000 to create their own space can. There was simply no way Pepsi could have theirs ready in time. But Pepsi, the upstart underdog, was hungry. It was nimble. It was innovative. And Pepsi came up with a solution that eluded the best scientific minds at Coke. They simply put Pepsi in a device that was nothing more than the device used to dispense
shaving cream. Be nice and clean. Shave every day and you'll always look keen.
Again from the New York Times, quote, "The Pepsi can, as far as I could tell, was just a shaving cream can," said Dr. Acton, the astronaut who held the device during a training exercise. In fact, Pepsi had put on a stick-on label, unquote. Coke was fucking pissed. They spent all that money, all that time, all that lobbying effort of politicians to be the first carbonated soft drink in space, and fucking Pepsi just put their shit in a shaving cream can. So Coke tried backstabbing Pepsi, this time bringing their own Reagan acolyte into the fight. More from the Times, quote, with just over 2 weeks until launch, Coca Cola and its allies appealed directly to the White House to get PepsiCo off the flight. The White House staff, trying to make sense over their ever-intensifying scrum of senators, cola executives, and lobbyists, compiled a memo chronicling the incident they call the Great Coke-Pepsi-NASA debacle, with a full understanding of the year-long administrative melee over the soft drink marketing stunt. The White House opted to stay out of it, leaving the decision to NASA. The NASA administrator shook off Coca-Cola's last-dip lobbying attempt to keep PepsiCo grounded. You know what? I'm just a poor, dumb government official, he recalled, telling Michael Deaver, a Coca-Cola lobbyist who had recently been Mr. Reagan's deputy chief of staff. I can't discriminate between colas. Coca-Cola was out of options, and PepsiCo would fly, unquote. So it was, July 29th, 1985. The Space Shuttle Challenger blasted off the launch pad for shuttle mission STS-51F. On board the shuttle was the brand spanking new European-designed Space Lab, an infrared telescope designed to peer into the furthest distances of the galaxy, a satellite to study the ionosphere, some fossil bones and eggshells for no adequately explored reason, and 2 containers christened in NASA speak as Carbonated Beverage Dispenser Evaluation System, because God forbid you call it something simple like political clusterfuck marketing stunt gone tits up, or something like that. The astronauts trained extensively in the CBDES in Houston before the launch, because you don't want to be in orbit and have the pull tab snap off and the nearest can opener be 500 miles below you on the surface. Also, if they made an error cracking open the cans, the pressure from the fizz could shoot them across the shuttle, resulting in, well, embarrassment, because, again, the whole thing was designed so that sticky soda wouldn't spew all over the cabin. In between actual science, the crew gathered to finally try the product, which had been anonymized and randomized to prevent favor. Nah, I'm kidding. They didn't bother to do that. They curried favor with Coke. In a blatant sop to Coke, it would go first in recognition of how much money they had spent on the whole fucking endeavor. It should not surprise the astute listener that the, was not universally respected. Indeed, at least one crew member of STF-51F refused to participate in the test, not because he found it to be a thinly veiled marketing stunt that demeaned the space program and the science in general, but entirely because it offended him, because he was himself I
drink Dr. Pepper and I'm proud. I'm part of an original crowd. And if you look around these days, there seems to be a Dr. Pepper craze. I'm a pepper, he's a pepper, she's a pepper, we're a pepper. Wouldn't you like to be a pepper too? I'm a pepper, he's a pepper, she's a pepper. If you drink Dr. Pepper, you're a pepper too. Be a pepper, drink Dr. Pepper. Be a pepper, drink.
From CollectSpace.com, quote, John David Bartow was having none of it. A payload specialist aboard a 1985 flight of the Space Shuttle Challenger, Bartow sequestered himself away from his 6 crewmates. He was glad to be on his first mission, and even happier to have made it safely into space, but becoming one of the first astronauts to drink Coca-Cola or Pepsi off Earth was a sip too far. I thought it was frivolous and detracting from the science of the mission. I didn't like it at all, said Bartow, reflecting 35 years later on what the media dubbed then the Space Cola Wars. I said I'm not going to do it. I think it's a terrible idea. Gordon Fullerton, the mission's commander, decided that the easiest way to limit the crew's involvement, i.e. the NASA people, would be to have only Bartow and Lauren Acton, the flight's other payload specialists, who were not officially part of NASA, drink from the cans. But Bartow did not want to be any part of it. He could have put my alternate crew member on board the flight right there at that moment, but he went off and thought about it, said Bartow, regarding Fullerton's reaction. He said, okay, new plan. Everybody's going to drink except John. 3 of us will drink Pepsi and 3 will drink Coke. So when it came time to drink, Bartow was banned to the flight deck. Fullerton, England, and mission specialist Story Musgrave tried out Coke, Acton pilot Roy Bridges and mission specialist Carl Heinz drank the Pepsi, unquote. Bartow took one small stand for man, one giant fuck you to corporate shilling in orbit. After all the chicanery, the political fuckery, and $250,000 that could have gone to actual science or, as a minimum, buying 500,000 cans of Coke for thirsty people everywhere, what were the scientific findings of this vital space experiment? Going back to the Times, the whole article is linked in the show notes as a gift link. It is well worth the read. Quote, a number of hours into the flight, orbiting more than 100 miles above Earth, astronauts, some sick from weightlessness, drank the first sodas in space. To recognize Coca Cola's initiative in starting the project, the astronauts tested the company's container first, pushing a button to spray the soda in their mouths. It was warm and sometimes frothy, but recognizably Coke, ending with a slight metallic taste from the dispensing mechanism. Hours later, astronauts on the other shift tasted the Pepsi cans, unquote. After reviewing the data, the teams reported that Coke tasted more like the beverage on Earth, and Pepsi was more fun to play with while in orbit, as they squirted small balls of Pepsi out of the container and let them drift around the cabin. The final verdict, however, was not good for either company. Again from the Times, quote, in microgravity, gas in the soda can't escape the stomach like it would on Earth, causing an uncomfortable phenomenon called wet burps. The same forces that keep the fizz in the center of the floating soda ball also keep the carbonation mixed with the contents of one's stomach. They come out in equal measure during a burp. And that is why there are no Coke machines on the International Space Station today, because drinking carbonated soda in microgravity makes you,
like a verb.
Yeah, part vomit, part burp. And that, and the enormous expense of launching a 700-pound fully loaded drink machine into orbit and then sending out refills every few weeks, has kept them out of the space program. The profit margins on the Enterprise were already pretty slim, so the financing just never worked out. It was a stupid marketing stunt that was overshadowed by more important things and remains largely forgotten today for good reasons, but it was still not the most expensive space soda marketing stunt in history, and it wasn't even close. That honor belongs entirely to Pepsi, who spent $300 million to film a Pepsi commercial on the Russian Mir space station in 1996. It was less a commercial than some footage of a cosmonaut launching a big-ass Mylar Pepsi balloon into orbit. The idea was to put a billboard in space where presumably one could view it if they had a handy telescope, but eventually worked its way down to a 4-foot-tall helium balloon chucked out an airlock for the low price of $300 million American dollars, because those Russians, they were quick studies in the ways of
capitalism.
When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
This is Jason Momoa, and I'll be your finance professor today. Welcome to Banking Smarter 101 with Chime. Bam! First lesson, sign up for Chime and set up direct deposit. You'll be joining millions of members banking fee-free. Second lesson, get cash back on eligible purchases while building credit and a higher APY on your savings. That's how you bank smarter this season. Fa-la-la-la-la, class dismissed. Join Chime today.
Chime is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services and a secure Chime Visa credit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. Members FDIC. Optional services and products may have fees or charges. Details at chime.com/fees-info. With a qualifying direct deposit, earn 1.5% cash back on eligible secure Chime Visa credit card purchases. On-time payment history may have a positive impact on your credit score. Results may vary. APY means annual percentage yield. Learn about credit building and more at chime.com.
That is it for the show this week. We are back on our bullshit after our little hiatus and rolling hard into the holidays. I guess we will have all new content in December, and then Pod Friends, starting in January, we open the book on a whole new generation's worth of bullshit. As what the hell were you thinking who looks back to the generation that made all of our bullshit possible, the baby boomers. Starting in January, we'll be talking about all the things that made the boomers the way they are.
Whiny, narcissistic, self-indulgent people with a simple philosophy. Give me it, it's mine! Give me that, it's mine!
Because, y'all, if you think Generation X is bad, and we are, we don't hold a candle to the fucking boomers. Speaking of self-indulgence, rate and review this show wherever you get your pods. It helps others find us, discover for themselves just how badly I need validation from strangers. Kick us $1 at patreon.com/whatthehellpodcast because those Mickey Mouse ears don't pay for themselves. Do all the things that Jeremy tells you to do in the closing credits, otherwise he's not going to take us for Disney World this year. And so for me, Dave, here I am, floating in my tin can Bledsoe. Producer,
I will not disgrace Bowie like this.
Gavin, and all the fictional astronauts on the show, we want to say, we drank the Mountain Dew and the burps are making us blue. And we'll see you all next week.
Lock your Soyuz hatch and put your helmet on. Ground control to Major Tom. Commencing countdown, engines on. Detach from the station and may God's love be with you. This is ground control to Major Tom. You really made it very. And the papers want to know who shows you where. But it's time to guide the capsule in the air.
What the Hell Were You Thinking stars Dave Bledsoe and features Gavin St. James and several fictional minions. The show is produced by Kimberly Steele and a part of the Seltzer Kings podcast network. You can find more information on the show on their website, whatthehellpodcast.com, or on Facebook as What the Hell Podcast. Thanks for listening.
I have no ending for this, so I take a small bow.
Another fucking Christmas.
Seltzer Kings
Podcasts.